And welcome to the Industrial Product Finder webinar on safety and security, industrial safety and security. Welcome to all of you. I know all of us are working from home under these lockdown conditions. I hope you guys, everyone is safe and healthy, and your loved ones are safe and healthy as well. Please take care. This webinar has been organized by ASAP Info Global Group, the publishers of Industrial Product Finder magazine. Here are the topic and the speakers. So that's the topic: how safe are the workplaces? And we have a extremely good panel to discuss this topic. Is it visible? I haven't started the presentation. Because I haven't put the presentation is not on. Putting the slides up, just a minute. Okay. So here are the panelists. Mr. Hemant Sethi from British Safety Council, Mr. Prashant Singh from Team Lease Services, Mr. Arun Nandi from Covestro, Professor A.K. Singh is still trying to join, Mr. Srinivas from Louis Berger, and Mr. Gaurang Baxi, who is also from Safety for Biz Consultants LLP, and he is EHS Advisor DNV. So some words about us first. Industrial Product Finder has been running for last 48 years, is the go-to source for the procurement departments, purchasing officers, CTOs, heads of R&D, production, QC and QA, maintenance, etc. types of management. And it provides an array of industrial products and solutions for procurement for the engineering industry. It has 200 products every month across 38 verticals. Look at the audience profile here for the magazine. It has a very powerful online reach, and we also encourage a lot of products to be put up on the website. Like we said, 200. We have nearly 77,000 products online, and we encourage you to also share if you have launched any new products with us, and I'll be providing the details at the end of this presentation where you can provide this. Another, you can see there is a huge international viewership. Nearly 35% is from abroad, which makes it possible for the SMEs which enlist their products on our website to manage to even export and get leads from exports. We have just started another ability to put videos on our online portal. Here's a sample of what this video can be self-created by logging into a link on our website, and it gets created in like 5 minutes. It's pretty simple, but this is just to give you a sample of this is how it is. you can either upload photographs or a video clip, and we get the whole video made for you within 5 to 10 minutes. More about that later. Here's another sample. So the product videos that we put up actually encourage a lot of leads. People inquire because they want to see industrial products actually online in motion to be able to discover what the utility of that product is. We track the inquiries that come, and we deliver it to the people who have put up the videos. So it's a great way of pushing up inquiries to your products. I think a great need today that we need to uh, help SMEs improve their reach. So ASAP Digital Services, part of our group, provides social media management, website creation, lead generation, and others. So that's whole just a pitch about us, just for your knowledge and information. Getting back to the topic, uh, the Bhopal gas tragedy was undoubtedly the world's biggest industrial disaster, and also India's biggest industrial disaster. It happened in December 1984 at a plant in Bhopal, killed more than 15,000 people, affected more than 6 lakh workers, and the reasons were procedure breach, not proper upkeep of equipment, improper resources, no effective public warnings, and ignorance in handling situation. Uh, Another one, Jaipur Oil Depot fire, which took place on 29th October 2009, Indian Oil Corporation. The fire raged for 11 days. And caused a lot of losses, accidental oil blast. Of course, petrol was being transferred from the Indian Oil Corporation's oil depot to a pipeline. And obviously, there was reasons where normal safety procedures were not observed, absence of leak stopping devices, insufficient understanding of hazards. Recently, this is like last year, there was another one in the chemical factory in Wagadi in Dhule, Maharashtra. And again, short circuit, no effective public warning of the disaster, ignorance in handling the situation. So I think, now let's get on to the panelists. Let's ask of them what is the present scenario. So I would like to, before I address the question to Mr. Sethi, I want to quote some figures here that according to the Labor and Employment Ministry, 3,562 workers died in factory accidents across India between 2014 and 2016, and more than 51,000 were injured in that period. This works out to an average of 3 deaths. This works out to an average of 3 deaths and 47 injuries every single day. British Safety Council painted an even bleaker picture. 48,000 workers die of occupational accidents every year in India, of which 24% are from construction industry. Mr. Sethi, would you like to answer this question? What is the present scenario in occupational safety and health standards in India?
Thank you, Pratap. Let me just begin by also thanking IPF for organizing this webinar, which I think and also putting together a very interesting set of topics for discussion. So, yes, there is a vast variance between the work that our organization, the British Safety Council, has done in terms of understanding the true impact of occupational health and safety performance or the lack of it. And there is a fair amount of variance. That's for various reasons. But if I come back to the question that you have asked, what is the current scenario and have things improved over the span of the past decade or so? I'll try to keep it pretty objective because it's pretty easy to go into a very vast subjective mode with such a question. Overall, where are we right now? I think there remains a lot of scope for improvement across the board in India. I won't say that the situation is grim per se. Whilst there has been improvements over time, and certainly if you look back 30, 40 years where we were fundamentally an agricultural economy to today being a multifaceted, economic power of sorts across incomparable across regions and boundaries. Uh, the scenario is very varied, and if you look at it by sector, there are pockets of excellent performance. Sectors such as oil and gas, for example. If you look at it from a scale perspective, the large and the medium-sized organizations are operating at a reasonably good level in some cases, and there are examples of global performance or global standards being met by some of the leading Indian organizations or multinational organizations operating in India. I think when it comes to the smaller and the SME and the MSME sectors, there is a large scope of improvement. If we talk about, where have we come in the past 10 years, there remains a lot to be done. I think fundamentally, the areas that need to be looked at are, the behavioral aspects. There is an underlying reason why safety in India is more of a challenge than some of the other more developed countries. Whether it is driving a vehicle, crossing the road, safety somehow is not first nature to us, and it's based on how we have, I think, either grown up or our life leading into the professional domain. Uh, Leadership plays a vital role in providing the steer and the direction, and there is tremendous scope for every aspect of leadership across industries and organizations to really understand safety comes first. Safety is not an afterthought, and safety is an important building block for building a good business, be it resource allocation or monitoring performance, every single aspect of it. So whilst we, by working with a number of organizations across India, we have
Now let me take the question to Mr. Baxi. Mr. Baxi, who's from Safety for Biz Consultants. Mr. Bakshi, as per some statistics, there is currently one inspector for every 506 registered factories. So I think there is not enough resources to audit possibly the what Mr. Sethi was mentioning. In a country like ours, there aren't enough resources auditing these facilities. So which are the health, safety, and environment issues that need urgent attention of the industry? We have to prioritize. So would you be able to throw some light on this?
Yeah, while I agree that there is a lot of dearth in terms of scarcity of auditors from the governance aspect, but doesn't stop industry to proactively implement safety. So my take is the industry is leading the efforts and not necessarily the government inspectors. The accountability for safety is primarily with industry. Once the standards and sets of rules and codes are formalized and notified. In terms of top 3 HSE issues, I will primarily focus on H and S and not E part currently for this webinar. The first take I'll take on the industry. One of the most significant challenges is safety culture and accountability for safety in an organization. Across the world, across various geographies, I think leadership and accountability is one of the biggest challenge which makes or breaks the safety culture. Second point for the industry is the risk-based approach versus compliance-based. Are we mitigating risks where it matters the most, or are we complying on paper rather than practice? So risk-based approach and integration with business is another area where industries across broad spectrums still have scope for improvement. Third is use of technology and innovation to mitigate H&S risks. And the last point I would make is the fourth, which is in addition in current context, is business continuity management implementation. I know industries that based on their hazard profiles have business continuity plans, but looking at current situation across the globe, are these plans valid in terms of the risk profile and how they are resourced in case of business disruptions? I think that these are some of the areas where industry needs to focus on. In terms of policy maker, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
For policy makers, I think should be a coordinated approach for raising H&S awareness, as Hemant also mentioned in India. I think we need to have at a national level certain aspects of awareness through formal education, schools, colleges, where people are, it's like catch them young and inculcate on safety. Yeah. That's one of the areas where government or the policy makers can look into. Changing regulation, considering trend in technological advances, which the policy makers need to be aware of and then amend regulations more frequently. I think the biggest challenge is the lead time when the regulation gets amended and notified and then get implemented. The lead time, by that time, a lot of technological innovations happen and then different risk profile is there in the organizations or this sector in the industry. So the regulations may need to be updated more frequently and more dynamic. And incentives for technological innovation to reduce H&S risks. I think at the policy level, what people can or the government can look at is what are the incentives for use of technology and innovation for reducing H&S risks.
Yeah. So like you said, I think catch them early, catch them young. And I think, like it or not, in a current scenario of COVID-19, I think we all are very, very highly aware of safety measures that need to be deployed in an environment. And more so now, as we probably in the next question, in the later questions, we will address that as well. So, but you know, we have around 13 labor laws, Mr. Baxi, and dealing with safety, health, and working conditions of workers. And there is a proposed bill to merge these 13 laws into single labor code on occupational safety, health, and working conditions. How will the proposed labor codes, for the industry change the present safety and health norm? How will this change, by merging all them into, a few codes?
I think the basic principle of safety improvement, what I would take is simplicity. I think this code, by merging 13 regulations or acts in different domains, simplifies to an extent using the synergies of existing regulations the approach towards health and safety. So by simplifying and merging into a code, it will help industry to look at various regulations within the OH&S and then simplify permitting, licensing, implementation in their areas of business. I'll take an example of cement industry here. Mines Act and Factories Act implementation in one factory. Now it's just with this code, I think there are a lot of synergies which can be explored, and it will make life much easier for the implementation. Once again, focusing that implementation is an industry accountability. The code will just facilitate implementation or the ease of implementation. I think that's my take on this code and simplification. It's a welcome initiative. Less is more in any area of improvement. So by synergizing areas of improvement and regulation, I think it's a movement in the right direction for various sectors.
Mr. Srinivas, would you like to comment on whether you think this kind of a proposed code can improve safety standards?
Firstly, thank you, IPF, for this excellent platform on which this noble kind of a thing is taken up. It's a very important step. Thank you, Mr. Pratap. As of course, Mr. Baxi brought out, it has made the thing simple. Now, for example, the companies had to earlier register under 6 different acts. There were so many labor acts in different states. There were different type of rules, and so the companies had to, for every facet of work, for every location, for different projects, they had to register separately, and that was on a work order. Now, the moment a work order changes, again they had to register. There were rules were very strict. Too much. You could say procedural kind of a hassle, too much of red tapeism, and it also gave birth to, or probably left a loophole for a lot of probably corruption too. Now, therefore, it's a very important thing to make it all simple, bring it under one common kind of a code and a law. Now, the present one simplifies by making it compulsory for these companies to register in one go, and there is an automatic kind of an extension of the registration. Now, therefore, what happens is the reference to the manual, reference to the code becomes simple. The next step is only implementation. Of course, all the works, all the projects, all the procedures are all guided by respective codes. There are references in this code for various types of works to be done in a particular manner, and the state governments and the various statutory bodies are still being given leverage to form the rules. So yes, definitely, this will go a long way in helping improving safety aspect.
So, as Mr. Baxi had mentioned, that one of the key findings was leadership and accountability as the major reason how we can mitigate such risks. Um, how important is the role of top management to this? I mean, do you see that the top management's involvement and continuous supervision and enforcement is key?
Yeah, as it is said, safety should always be driven from the top. So before getting into the basic nitty-gritty of real safety management, it is critical that the company's board of directors are made aware of their role in relation to the health and safety legislation. An easy way actually of achieving this important thing is by conducting a training session for the senior management. Now, a few hours is usually enough to get the point across for them to understand that when something goes wrong, if they understand that they are the ones who are going to end up in jail, that is sufficient. Without senior management being on board, it is impossible to have an effective safety management. You'll be actually swimming against the tide when it comes to trying to implementing various safety management procedures and making it robust. Right. Now, top management commitment and sensitivity to this critical aspect of safety is essential to setting of a high safety benchmark. Now, laying down of sound safety policy and maybe putting in safety mechanism to ensure that will thereafter follow. Another important aspect is the attitude of the top management towards safety. Typically, we see in many companies and projects that it is presumed that the persons vested with the safety are the ones who are solely responsible to ensure safety. This attitude needs to change. So there are organizations, I can quote one, let's say MMRDA, where I've seen it was very heartening to see the director himself drives highest importance. Now, I'm quoting this example. Maybe I'll even give one more example as to how this is being done. Every meeting, every conference has to start with safety point being deliberated first. And similarly, there are companies where every online seminar, meeting, conference also has to start with safety topic followed by the ethics topic, right? And in one recent incident, I saw that the topmost director in the government organization instructed all people in the project, including client, personnel, the contractors, the consultants, everybody to come up with one safety violation which they observed at workplace, and 2 days were given. Now, all those points were collected, and then they were all then directed to get the issue attended to. Now there are many such things which can be implemented from the top management. Another example is that at all the workplaces in another project area I saw, there are posters and stickers which are affixed where a WhatsApp number is given, where anyone who's in that area, it could be a worker, it could be any other person passing through, if he sees a safety violation, he can simply click the photograph, give the details of that location and the safety violation, and pass it to that WhatsApp number, which is the common one for the entire country. Now, this is the manner in which the top management can actually get into enforcing safety at various levels. And the next important thing is to ensure regular and transparent passage of information. A well-defined flow of information between the senior management and those vested with safety at site will help in taking critical decisions in time. And finally, apportioning of adequate resources in terms of competent manpower, good equipment, machinery, and other resources is again in the hands of the top management. Once they do it, there can be a very high benchmark of the safety which can be set at any workplace.
Right. I think you're right. I think, when 48,000 workers are dying every year due to occupational hazards, I think it is very, very important. We know what this number means. I mean, today we are sitting in this crisis with numbers going up and feeling so concerned, but we have this statistic that 48,000 workers die every year. And if top management and various other bodies are not really taking cognizance of it, I mean, there was this the Bhopal gas tragedy had one of these examples that there were buses there, or I think there was another fire explosion, one of the disasters which took place. There were buses on the campus, but the workers just ran out of the gates without using those buses, and they could have fled much more easily. So that brings us to training. Whatever protocol during disaster needs to be followed has to be ingrained, and therefore that brings me to the next question of training. And I'd like to address this to Mr. Prashant Singh from Team Lease. How important is training for the compliance of safety standards? We've seen so many of the disasters which have happened in the past have been primarily because I think something was amiss in their process and protocol.
Yeah, thank you so much. So before I answer this question, I would like to share some statistics, which we have seen across a couple of years, in the compliance world. So if you look at, so India is one of the most complex compliance, structured country today. It has more than 58,000 compliances across all streams. There are 27,000 labor compliances which are there, other than the environmental safety and health, commercial, statutory, various other things. 90% of the unorganized structure, or which is their part of it, is still where safety and security is still a question mark. Training and such awareness has become a need of the hour for them. There's very little awareness about workplace hazards due to lack of access to information on formal education. If you see right from all four hierarchies of government, which is central, state, corporation, and at panchayat level, awareness, education, trainings have been imparted in different forms and shapes. Today, large corporate or MSMEs, both are engaging with various experts. They're engaging with various agencies, in-house team. They have created their own specialist, subject matter expert, who are creating various modules, doing various sessions, not only to create awareness to the key stakeholders, but to all their employees. Since my profile, my role, requires me to interact with various HR heads, CFOs across various corporate and SMEs, we have come across that whenever we go and ask about certain programs, how compliant are you? So there is a big question mark which we have seen in most of these cases. They say till the time I'm not getting any notices, I'm not being questioned by government, I think I'm compliant. When we ask what about education, awareness, and insight about this entire good governance, so they say that we have a very little material on that, less of knowledge, though we rely on a lot of subject matter experts. But today, at every level, in terms of imparting training, whether it's related with safety, security, or occupational hazard, we are seeing that they are asking for certain module, which is not only offline, but they are also looking at online model where gamification word is now coming into play. A lot of companies are looking how we can create a gamification module on safety and security, which can be shown to their employees at each level, not only in urban, but also in rural areas, so that they understand it and they implement it. Today, what we see that we are currently a paper-based, ad hoc and manual-driven organization or a institution. We need to move fast from paper-based to paperless, from ad hoc to transparent, and from manual to automated. That is the need of the hour. So if you look at, in my opinion, number one, the coverage and the laws needs to be refined, where this, amalgamation of those 13 laws into one, number one. Second, spreading awareness, creating insights about this entire program is must. And third is the development of infrastructure, which is most important because 90% of our unorganized sector who are working today lack that infrastructure facility. They work for the day. And at the same time, the safety, security, educations are lacking at those levels. So to me, training is must, not only a responsibility of government, but about also with institution and also with the employees of that institutions.
Yeah, but as we have seen again, I come back to the crisis which we are facing currently. We've seen how difficult it is to enforce something, because if you see Prime Minister himself had to come to convey to the people that what is social distancing, convey to them that the risks associated with this whole people of crowding, all this. The Prime Minister himself had to come and explain, or the Chief Minister have to come and explain. So I think what you're saying is correct, and therefore I want to move on to Mr. Sethi, whether what are the challenges in effective enforcement of safety provisions? Because we may have these, we may evolve, automate it, we may put them online, but unless and until people follow them, how are we going to mitigate this risk?
So let's stay with behavior. I touched upon it earlier. Gaurang touched upon culture, and to be honest with you, that is one of the fundamental issues in terms of enforcing or driving good safety, in the workplace. And it links back to what you were just talking about. Safety is all about understanding the challenges that are there for an individual in a work environment and adopting those, control measures or, taking the right preventive actions to avoid any harm. Now, fundamentally, I think in India, we've got numerous challenges that organizations don't deal with in totality. So we've got a very wide socio-economic challenge. So if you consider a factory environment, you've got workers coming into the factory environment from different sort of household, different sort of economic, financial backgrounds. They really are struggling to meet daily needs in many scenarios. But when we expect them to, walk into a factory premise and behave in a completely different manner, is that realistically possible without addressing everything that does need to be addressed so that they take proactive ownership of, their behaviors? So I would say behaviors is fundamentally one of the issues.
I think we are losing Mr. Sethi there. Mr. Nandi, would you like to come in on, then I think safety audits therefore become an important part of this. There has to be some mechanism of having safety audits done to ensure that this enforcement is being driven.
Yeah, I am here. Thank you very
Please
much,
go ahead.
Pratap. Hello, please.
Yes, Mr. Nandi, please go ahead.
Will you please repeat the question once again?
Why are safety audits important?
Yeah. See, first thing, I will like to say that firstly, it is a legal requirement. It is carried out on the basis of Code of Practice, IS 14489, 1998. which is basically a standard established audit objectives, criteria, and practice. And it also provides guidelines for establishing, planning, conducting, and documenting on OHS system at workplace. Safety audit really is a very structured process wherein information is collected relating to efficiency, effectiveness, and reliability of a company's total health and safety management system. These audits are then used for designing safety plan for every individual company. When we talk about audit, it also identifies the gap present in the practices. The policy is audited, legal compliance status is observed, procedure in implementation is also checked, and then the gaps are also identified. Behavior of the people. Hello?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Behavior of the people is also considered, it is taken into consideration. And most importantly, it gives a outside view. Normally what happens when we work in one company, we are used to the system, our daily practices. But when somebody from outside comes in, we get a third view of the individual, of the auditor. Secondly, the main purpose is to protect the employee and customers as well from any harm. And most importantly, if it is correctly conducted, it also safeguards even the existence of a company.
Okay. So, Mr. Sethi, can you comment, are companies opting for safety audits increasing? Is that increasing?
Yeah, I think so, because companies are recognizing that it's an effective leading indicator. And depending on whether they really want to look in the mirror or whether it is a exercise just to, kind of self-validate, it depends on the true intent. Audits are only as effective as you decide the objectives to be. It can be window dressing, as it's called. It can be staged, for the lack of a better expression. But then organizations that truly want to assess the effectiveness of any area, be it financial, operational, performance, safety, it can be a real look in the mirror. And it can provide this sort of roadmap for improvement that, is one of the most powerful and effective tools. So, certainly we see that from organizations we work with, and it's also a large part of what we do as an organization, safety auditing. So, yeah, absolutely. Organizations are looking at that beyond just regulatory design.
Okay. Mr. Nandi, I'd like to come back to you on the protection, personal protective equipment. I mean, we are seeing now, obviously, I think as we go back to normalcy from this lockdown, gradually, I think all the institutions, factories, etc., will have to have some kind of PPE to ensure their safety of their employees and their workers. So, could you just highlight the role quickly on this PPE for workers' safety?
Yeah, in a broader spectrum, if we go through the hierarchy of control measures, PP is really the last resort of control measure. It is basically an equipment that protects workers against safety risk on the job. The purpose is to reduce employee exposure to hazards when engineering and administrative control measures are not feasible or not effective to reduce the risk to applicable or rather acceptable level. PP protects the users against any physical harm or hazard present at workplace. Safety clothing is important at workplace as it protects users against any health and safety risk at workplace. It reduces the likelihood of injury, illness, and legal issues and ensures safety, healthy, and comfortable working. When I use the word comfortable, when we use any PP for the first time, definitely it is not comfortable. But when we are used to using the PP, when we have a good culture at site, it is really it becomes comfortable.
So yeah, so
Because
yeah,
PPs are designed to use, to rather protect the user's body from injury or infection.
yeah, we have
In
seen
this
Mr.
case,
Nandi now.
I like to highlight one thing. Yeah,
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 no, I was just saying that in the
please.
past we've seen these disasters where either the safety equipment or the PPE was not adequately provided for.
Yeah, yeah. So while working in a industry, I would like to highlight one thing, that is role of supervisor here is very important. We should not take into consideration that the work must be done, but the work must be done in a very safe way. So in that regard, selection of PPs, use of PPs, maintenance of PPs, and finally disposal of PPs is very important. Yes, Mr. Pratap.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Just for everyone's information, amidst this COVID-19 lockdown, there is one plant which has recently opened on 6th of April, that is day before yesterday. Deepak Nitrite, which is a chemical production plant in Gujarat, has received the permission from Vadodara administration to start their plant. Obviously, they must be, using high levels of protocol of safety and must have incorporated all safety and health standards, procedures, etc. And this is likely to become like a case where how other factories which can also follow a similar protocol can gradually resume activity, because finally we do need economic activity to resume. So in this case, I wanted some views to come. So Mr. Srinivas, would you like to comment on this? How do you think this is going to happen? Is this possible?
Yeah, in fact, post that tragedy, Bhopal tragedy that you mentioned about, which has thrown up the gaps in safety compliances in a very large way, not only for India, but also for across the world. A lot of stringent rules have been put in place. People have learned the lessons to a large extent, and at least to meet the legal compliance requirements, a lot of safety measures have been put in place. Now, when you look at the code, what typically is there in this new code is, let's say in part 6, clause 83 of the code, it relates to the permissible limits of exposure of the various toxic substances and chemicals. Also, the maximum permissible limits in any factory, that those limits can be laid down by the state government. The erstwhile Factories Act, which now is getting merged with the new code. In the Factories Act, the second schedule also lists the permissible levels of certain chemical substances in the work environment. Now, all the state governments, as the designated authorities, are now empowered to make rules in this matter relating to the manner in which the approval and licensing of such factories will be done, as per section 74 of this code, or the manner in which the information pertaining to the hazardous processes which are going to be involved in the manufacturing of whatever is being done in the factory. Now, pertaining to publicizing that information to the workers and general public. How it is going to be done, that is also that also finds a mention in this code. And maintenance of health and medical records of workers, the maximum permissible limit of exposure, the manner of providing the medical examination of the workers, or many of these aspects also find a mention in this. And all these factories continue to be governed by the domain-specific kind of codes, which are already existing and which will continue to exist. So as long as all the measures which are required to be put in place, they are there, and a transparent and a fair kind of a manner is followed in the approval and licensing of the factories, and as long as, like the way the other learned panelists have spoken, if the audits are done in the manner in which they're supposed to be done, it will all be fine, and I think there should not be any problem in running these. As we keep getting more and more, as we progress towards becoming a developed country, more and more industries like this will have to come, and we have to become self-reliant, and therefore these will have to be opened. And the only thing that needs to be kept in mind is that we definitely need a very strong enforcement mechanism for all the safety requirements. As long as that is done, I don't see there is any problem.
So I think, to summarize, I think there is a need for the top management to be involved to enforce. We need regulations which are simplified, probably aggregated into a single code which can cut across all states in a similar manner for everyone to follow across similar organizations. They need to be evolved, incorporate the automation, robotics, etc., which is coming in. There has to be an online mechanism, etc., also. So I think all these are very, very necessary in order that the time post-COVID, I think we all come back in a staggered manner to normalcy and then maintain that kind of safety. I think this has been a great wake-up call for all in safety and security. I'd like each panelist to give before we go into question answers of our audience, which are here with us. Just want to just quickly, like a rapid fire, 2 pieces of advice so that we can have zero accidents and mishaps in factories and industries. So let's start with Mr. Sethi. Your 2 tips. Mr. Sethi. Okay, Mr. Prashant Singh, can you come in with your two tips?
Yeah, so as I said earlier also, the 2-3 things important, not only for the government institutions, also for the organization and for the stakeholders in the organization. The first and foremost is the coverage and simplifying of law or the rules which they are laying. Second point is the spreading awareness, creating education and insight on the safety measures, on certain plans which has been laid down by government, laid down by the organization. And the third is creating an infrastructure. That's really important because that's one thing which we see. I mean, that's what you spoke about, Deepak Nitrite, as well. So these 3 things are the primary main points from my end.
Okay, Mr. Nandi, what are your 2 tips? Mr. Srinivas.
I think if I have to pick up only 2, then the first one that I would pick up is the involvement of the top management in developing and putting in place a very strong and effective kind of a safety management system. And the second thing probably I would focus on is picking up people with the right skill set. The trainers should be well skilled, and the workers and the supervisors all should be skilled. So there should be all that emphasis on the training and making sure that you pick up the right person for the right job. That will go a long way in ensuring safety at site.
Mr. Baxi.
Yeah, it's primarily 2, apart from the others which have already been given, is focus on practice and not paper. The second area is implement before you audit. Audit should not become like a tail wagging a dog. I'm sorry to use that term. Implement the standards and then audit. an audit should be value adding.
Very well. Okay, let's move on to questions from the audience now. So the one of the questions here is that, is cost a factor affecting the safety culture in industry? So principally, is cost, dogging the whole reason why people really give importance or less or more in a certain industry? Is cost really a factor? Anyone who would like to take this?
Are you able to hear me, Pratap, now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sorry, I think I had audio issues earlier. Cost is a major area of, well, I would say concern for organizations. So there is certainly, we see organizations that are willing to invest and organizations that see it as a cost. So safety is not a cost. Safety is an investment for the people who are termed as the biggest asset by every organization. But a demonstration of that is actually effectively investing in safety and using it, as a positive trigger, and creating the right, sort of vibe across your organization by demonstrating through every level of the organization's hierarchy that they truly do value safety investment. Be it in terms of when performance reviews are held, is it focused on production, or is it actually looking at safety effectively? I spoke earlier about don't shoot the messenger, accept the bad news and deal with the bad news. So yeah, so I mean, I completely believe that safety is a major, it's an obstacle is investment or cost.
The other question that is very interesting is that we are not really taking into account wireless radiation or occupational human exposure to static discharges, magnetic and electric fields. So awareness is also not there and education is also not there. I mean, what is being done about that? Is that being incorporated somewhere? Mr.
To
Baxi, would you
answer
like to
it,
take this?
yeah, to answer it more in terms of a generic way, all these types of hazards and its associated risks need to be captured in the risk assessment process. So unless until if it's not captured, then it's like ignorance is bliss type of situation. So whether it's a static charge or a wireless exposure, the basic system document is your hazard identification and risk assessment. So in any sector, even if you're in an office environment or in a manufacturing environment or in a project, across all locations, across all geographies, risk assessment is the fundamental approach and the tool to capture all these areas. So, and then obviously, once you capture it as a risk, you can identify control measures.
Okay, the one question which I think Mr. Prashant Singh can answer is that there's somebody who's asked that who's got 3,000 people in his factory and who are working mostly as apprentice, and one associate last month ended his life due to peer pressure. How can that be? I think there is a psychological issue. How do you tackle such issues which can be in a large workforce? I mean, how can you safeguard as a industry? How can you safeguard yourself that such incidents don't occur?
Yeah. So see, today, if you see any organization, I mean, we talk about large corporates or mid-sized account, they are investing, the top management is investing 11% of their total time in providing good governance. We have met more than 500 such accounts across last 2 years. And we have seen the amount of investment they are doing in terms of providing right compliances, putting right security and safety measures, appointing SMEs in their organization, whether it's an off-role employee or on-role employee, whether it's a contract which is on long-term or short-term, apprentice. So all categories have been divided into various buckets. There's an SME in the organization who's taking care of all such requests. Today, more than 3,000 or less than 3,000, if you see, have certain agencies or vendors or partners who have been allocated to give them guidance in terms of what are the right safety measure, what are the ways they should be protected in terms of their bonuses, in terms of their payouts, salaries, whatever is there. So in my opinion, organization, whether it's a single location based or multi-location, whether it's a single branch or a multi-branch location, they all have to follow a rhythm where they need to have a separate department, separate team, set of people who need to understand their people, process, and technology in terms of what's being deployed for compliance and providing good governance.
Another question is, how important are insurance policies with respect to workers' safety? I mean, what role do insurance policies play? Do they make them careless, or do they actually bring about a sense of awareness? Mr. Sethi, would you like to take that?
Well, that occurs. So my understanding around this is led by the organizations that we speak with. And quite often those can be organizations that are progressive and are doing proactive measures. Some of my fellow panelists, I think, are also with, or they have been with organizations, so it'll be interesting to get their views. But from my standpoint, the information I can share is it's led by the communication that the organization puts out to its workers in this area.
One other question is on how are you going to maintain, with social distancing norms coming in, how are you going to, and you're going to have fewer team members, then you have to bring in automation, obviously, in order to be able to work with fewer team members. So how is this going to affect safety? Um, I mean, obviously, I think it seems obvious that if you're bringing in automation, if you're able to bring in automation, there will be uh, provision for the fact that you can operate with fewer members. So there will be safety already inbuilt in that system. But if you are not going to use automation and you're going to have fewer people, there can be issues of safety.
Could I just comment on that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I think it goes back to the earlier question that you also put out about organizations looking to restart operations. I personally have spoken to so many different, clients of ours in the past 2 weeks who are right now fully geared up for 15th of April. They've spent so much of time and they continue to spend so much of time on the precautions that need to be taken, including social distancing. If you talk about a shop floor environment where you had X number of workers now, how are they going to implement that? So they are actually looking at that very, very actively. Automation obviously is an excellent answer, but that too needs implementation, it needs facilitation, etc., etc. So the challenge is there. We ourselves, in fact, are doing a dedicated webinar in the coming week on the 13th, and anybody who does want to attend that can do so by picking up on my LinkedIn feed, where we are looking specifically at action planning for resuming operations. What Gaurang touched upon, the risk assessment associated with actually looking at COVID-19 related, risks and implementing that. Because what we often find is it's a piecemeal approach. People at a very senior level in organizations are trying to outline all the risks that are there and trying to put plans for it. There has to be a systemic risk assessment based process which outlines all the risks that exist across the different facilities, different work functions, different teams, including people working at home. And then bringing all that together to have actually a structured strategy around how to manage all the risks due to COVID-19. I think that that kind of methodology is going to be really important. People are concerned about, every single aspect of business. They're going to be trucks all of a sudden that will need to start coming into premises from a certain point of time. What measures do we implement? And there's a lot to be done. And nobody has the answers, I think, as we all expect. But people are thinking about it, Pratap. That's for sure.
But so there is another question.
If I may just add to what Mr. Sethi has said,
Yes,
just
sir.
2 points. You need to look at it from 2 perspectives. One, whether the infection is there inside the person, and whether the person is carrying the infection on his surface. Now, for the surface infection, there are things like disinfection tunnel which have come up, hydrogen peroxide spraying or whatever, or some other form of disinfection which can be carried out. Now, if the person himself is carrying the infection inside his body and then therefore is already exposed and is likely to cause spread of COVID, such a person can be identified to a large extent based on his past exposure to such an environment. there are many labor colonies where the laborers are confined to the labor colonies themselves, and they are not exposed to any outside influence or infection at all. If they've all been protected and they need to get back to the work, then probably it is safe. But if there are migrant workers who've gone away and they need to get back and then they start working, they may have to be screened more closely and maybe put under quarantine for a short period of time and then get it. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we have come to the close of the webinar. We had around 300 attendees for this, and thank you very much, panelists, for bringing in such highlighting the importance of this subject in today's times, particularly. And we hope all of you all got the knowledge and wisdom of these our panelists together. And please, Industrial Product Finder will be conducting many more such webinars to assist SMEs and manufacturing companies in keeping in pace with the recovery process and growth. So stay tuned and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.